comes down to your Mavericks, though, they'll be going on Sunday. They start against the Los Angeles Clippers in LA at Crypto.com Arena. Super excited for this, the third set in the trilogy between these two teams in the playoffs. And to help us get acclimated with the series and have a little bit more insight, we welcome on the DNM Leasing Hotline, the associate editor from ESPN.com Los Angeles, a longtime journalist in SoCal. His name is Forrest Lee. Forrest, how are you doing this evening?
Forrest Lee.
Great. How you doing?
Man, we are doing great. We're excited. We've been had a lot of juice watching Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving, and the rest of these Mavericks really, blaze into the end of the season and into the playoffs. And so people are super excited just with the momentum that they've built getting to the end of the season, but then also with this particular matchup. And I think the first thing that everybody wants to know is, do we have any updates on Kawhi Leonard and that knee?
Yeah, really.
Yes, we do. He went through a limited practice today, and Ty Lue is still being kind of quiet on what's going on. But like I said, he went through a limited practice, a quarter of a practice, as Ty told ESPN. So I'm not sure what that means and what his availability is going to be for this game one, but it's a little suspect.
For those who don't know,
before.
Go ahead. They've done this before.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yes. I think a couple of years ago when they played Dallas, they had something similar, and they're just pretty quiet about everything surrounding him. So,
yeah. Speaking of Kawhi,
Ty Lue said, we'll see.
Yeah, we'll find out. We'll see. Speaking of Kawhi, this is the lowdown from afar. He's had his healthiest season, not as much load management this year as he had, since 2016, 2017 season. With that being said, though, with this injury, this knee injury, he hadn't played since March 31st. So
exactly.
So what? Everybody's kind of curious of which Clippers team is going to show up. Is this going to be the team that showed up in January and December? I think they were undefeated in December. The whole month of December, they didn't lose a damn game. And then, like I said, right now, sometimes they win, sometimes they lose.
Exactly. There was a stretch they went 26-5, and everybody was saying, they could probably meet the Nuggets in the conference finals, but that obviously kind of quieted down after the latest stretch, and being without Kawhi for the last 8 games, they haven't been the same team. Plus, Russ was hurt for a stretch there too. So they've. Your guess is as good as mine as far as what team is going to show up. Without Kawhi, though, I don't see how they beat the Mavericks, particularly with the play of Gafford and P.J. Washington. Those have been great additions for the Mavs, so they're going to be a problem.
Yeah, and one of the things, as we talk to Forrest Lee here on the Get Right on 105.3 The Fan, one of the things that locally those young guys, Gafford and Washington brought is a level of energy, and the camaraderie on this team has made their mentality and their focus even more steeled. And that makes me think of, where are the Clippers as well, like when we talk about the mentality. I know at one point during the season, Tyronn Lue called the team soft. Like, where are they as they careen towards the playoffs mentally as a team?
That's another one that's up in the air, because they've that locker room. That's been one of the problems that most people in our business believe, that there's really no leader in that locker room except for Westbrook, and the others are kind of go along to get along. But that's been one critique on them, that there's no leadership in the locker room, which is pretty bad for a team with the expectations that they have.
With that expectation, there's also this subplot going on. We know Kawhi signed his extension, but I heard the other three, Paul George, James Harden, and Russell Westbrook, they don't even know if they're going to play in the new building next year.
This is true. And we thought Paul George, that was a given, that they would eventually come to a deal. But that's come to a stall. Harden, you'd like to think that he might be a better chance of signing than Paul George, and I don't know anything as far as that goes, but you think after trading for Harden that they wouldn't, just let him go.
Yeah.
And that's a whole lot of money that, the new collective bargaining agreement kind of prevents, guys signing like that, or, three superstars.
Yeah, but I imagine if there's anybody who's willing to pony up, it is the
Steve Ballmer,
the boisterous owner that is Steve Ballmer.
Yes, it is.
As we continue talking to Forrest Lee here on the Get Right, Forrest, one thing that I know was huge around here was when Brian Damaris, cut a little bit of a wrestling promo on James Harden when he was acquired by the Los Angeles Clippers. And when we start talking about narratives in a postseason, that's one that pops up as a possibility. Do we have any idea on, when it comes to the team, how they feel about that? Or is there any level of we're playing for Harden, or maybe even does Harden himself have a level of chip on his shoulder after something like that happened very publicly?
It's been kind of comical, some of the things he's done. The one game when Leonard's shooting from the corner, he passes it to him and goes and jumps at him.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, and he was saying, "Oh, we just want to have a little fun," but you're kind of like, "Nah, that's not the way you have fun." So I think they just kind of accept James as, just kind of a live wire sometimes. I don't think it's an issue in the locker room. I think, with his history, there's always something with James. So I think they just kind of accept that.
Yeah. Hey, Forrest, what about the matchup? Did the Mavericks fans probably, oh, no, not the Clippers again. Maverick players, like, we had a different squad except for Luka. But they always had problems with Luka, period, in the playoffs. Was there a preferred matchup that the Clippers wanted, or is this the team that they say, yeah, we'd like to take on the Mavericks again?
I'm not sure they really like this matchup because one thing, Luka and Kyrie they have started to gel a whole lot this year to where, they're a problem. And like I said, with the two new additions, they fit in very well. Real quick. I was surprised. I don't think this is a matchup that they're really, that they were saying, we want the Mavs. I don't think that was the case because the Mavs was giving them problems in the past. They lost the last two series with them, but Luka's, torched them. And I don't expect that to change. So with Kyrie playing as well as he has, there's some issues that the Clippers have to deal with.
Yeah. Speaking of Luka torching the Clippers, there's this one guy in particular that is barbecue chicken, and that would be Zubac, the center. Do you think Ty Lue might do something different with Zubac since all they do is find him? Luka hunts him down and just abuses him till he gets into foul trouble and winds up on the bench.
There's, the last, they were targeting, and Ty Lue had to go small, obviously. So I expect, something similar to happen where Luka's, looking out for him, or looking for him, to take advantage of him. And if it does happen again, I think Ty Lue has to do what he did before. You're going to have to sit him and go small.
Yep.
And even when they go small, I still think the benefit, if Kawhi's not there, there's benefit is to the Mavs easily.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fair considering that when he plays, he has the opportunity to be the best player. But if Kawhi Leonard is there, clearly the Mavs have the best player without a doubt. But I'd like to ask you this, Forrest, as we continue talking with Forrest Lee of ESPN.com Los Angeles. I want to focus in on the Clippers offensively because one of the reasons why you go and get James Harden is to get a organizing force on offense. And one of the things that he's brought is a pick and roll game that has been really good. But guarding pick and roll for these Mavericks has gotten a lot better with the size that they've added, and they like to play a drop coverage a lot. Can you give me a little insight into the Clippers offense? How have they played against drop coverages defensively? How have they been able to attack teams a lot better and more pointedly with the addition of James Harden?
Yes. And I go back to, when the stretch when they were playing really well. Harden was able, when he's facilitating, they're a much better team. He doesn't have to score as much as, say like when he was with Philly. When he's facilitating and let the others play and score and take care of business, they're a much better team. When he starts trying to score 40 or starts taking a bunch of shots, then they tend to get tentative. And Paul George, as good as he is, Paul George gets passive and he starts standing around and watching, and that's been one of the problems. Making these three gel. at times, they're good, but Paul George will stand back and watch a lot of times, and it frustrates Ty Lue to no end because he keeps telling him, "You're the guy." And like I said, if he's not facilitating and Harden's taking shots, then that's not their game.
Is there anybody on the Clippers roster that can slow down Kyrie? I only bring that up because nobody can stop him, but can somebody slow him down on your squad?
No. No
Too
way.
skilled, man. Too skilled.
And, I saw something Kyrie said earlier, I think it was last week, about how his last couple of performances in the playoffs, that he wanted to kind of erase some of that. I think it was when he was with the Nets that, when they got knocked out.
Right.
That, that's really stuck with him, and I expect big things out of him.
Now, Forrest, before we let
you – to answer your question, no one can stop him.
Yeah, that's the beauty of having the two of them, Kyrie and Luka, together. In fact, that's what Luka was asked about earlier today, the idea of what's different. And he said, we have Kai. Now, one thing about that is when we look at these teams, you mentioned Gafford and Washington. Not everybody knows that about the Mavericks because they haven't been on the national stage. And even in that same way, I don't think people are watching the Clippers intently. What have you noticed from having a more local eye on this Clippers team that maybe has been missed by the national coverage of them that we would not necessarily know in Dallas-Fort Worth?
They got some great – not great, but they got some good players coming off the bench. Norman Powell is – Portland gave him to the Clippers, which a lot of people kind of shook their heads when they traded him. Norman Powell could make a difference in this series. He's a good three-point shooter from the corners. He defends well. I expect to see him on Kyrie a little bit. He could make a difference in this series. Matter of fact, I expect him to make some major contributions because other than him coming off their bench, there's not a lot of people that can light it up like him. So he could play a big role in this series.
Forrest, let's talk about the home crowd. The Clippers have the home court advantage. They got the first two games there, come to Dallas for 2 games, split the last 3. Game 7, if needed, would be in L.A. Are the Clippers crowds really juiced up over the last few years? I'm only asking because when the Lob City days, they were just insanely loud.
Yes. They'll crank it up during the playoffs. I mean, Lob City, that's a whole different area where, yeah, it was a lot of excitement there. This crowd, they'll bring it during the playoffs, and I imagine they want to make it like a nice little statement before they leave Crypto.com and go to their new place. And that's another thing about, this playoff series. They want to do well to, maybe justify going back and, spending all this money on Paul George and James Harden.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like they have to because you're opening a new building and people are going to want to see, a championship team, which obviously they've never developed into. But I think the crowd will be there. I don't think there's any problem there.
Real quick, before we go on this, I don't want to leave this because today we learned that Blake Griffin is retiring, and you've been a long time covering that team, that whole city. Can you contextualize what Blake Griffin means there for those of us that maybe can't fully get it on the local level?
Blake was huge, and I don't think some of the younger crowd understands how dominant Blake was at some points in his career. And you're talking about crowd. He was a crowd pleaser. And, you go back to the dunks, the jumping over the car in the dunk contest in the All-Star game. Blake was huge here. And I'm sure I'll throw this one out there. I think one of the first Clippers to get their number retired in the new place will be Blake.
I can see that.
His impact here was huge.
Yeah, he had to be one of the guys that actually helped people feel good about filtering into what was then Staples Center consistently to watch the Clippers and not necessarily the Lakers.
Exactly. Oh, Forrest, I'm going to go ahead and bust this out. Blake went to OU. Forrest went to OU. I went to OU. We are definitely biased.
I'm glad you said it.
Well, we're glad you said it and you had some time to speak with us,
buddy.
Forrest. We really appreciate your time and your insight, and we'll be excited to maybe talk to you again over the course of this series.
Yeah, let's do that, man.
All right. Look forward to it.